to the big show.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? I'm the Dr. Bob Lee from 107.5 WPLS and the Make the Grade Foundation for Education. You're watching Rude Rangers TV.
Welcome. This is Conversations with the Quick Flick Critic. I'm your host, John Smistad. Each week, I introduce you to a wide range of remarkably creative and inherently interesting people representing a broad spectrum spanning the world of entertainment. I invite you to listen, learn, laugh. Today's guest is Dan Mirvish. Dan has got quite a background. He's an award-winning filmmaker. He's a best-selling author. And he co-founded the Slamdance Film Festival in Utah, and we're gonna talk about that. But first of all, we're gonna talk about his new movie called 18 and a Half, which revisits the infamous Watergate scandal in a dark and farcical tale. It says here, I've seen the film, and I can definitely attest to that description. Dan, welcome to Conversations with the Quick Flick Critic.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Dan, I want to read the synopsis of the movie, the log line, as it were, to give people an idea of what we're talking about here. In 1974, a White House transcriber is thrust into the Watergate scandal when she obtains the only copy of the infamous 18 and a half minute gap in Nixon's tapes. That was believed to be a conversation between then President Nixon and one of his staff members, Bob Haldeman, that was never recovered, never listened to. But these are tapes that Nixon recorded, President Nixon recorded in 1972, 1974, after the 1972 break-in, discussing the Watergate break-in. Dan, what inspired you to make this movie and focus in on that specific moment in history?
Well, it was, I've always been fascinated by Watergate. I majored in history and poli-sci. I worked in Washington for a couple of years as a Senate speechwriter, and I knew a few people tangentially involved with Watergate over the years. So I'd kind of always been looking for an excuse to do something with it. And then I stumbled into my friend Terry Keefe owns this great motel out on the tip of Long Island, in Greenport, Long Island, called the Silver Sands Motel, that his grandparents had built in the 50s and 60s. And Terry had kind of preserved it, and no one had ever shot a feature film there. They'd shot music videos and TV. And he said, hey, if you ever want to shoot a film, we're available. We're closed in the winter. Everyone on cast and crew can stay here. And this was, we were having this conversation about the day after Trump got elected in 2016. Wow. And we had just been talking to Jules Feiffer, very famous Pulitzer Prize, Oscar-winning cartoonist, who had written my last film, Bernard and Huey. And so we had just been talking about Nixon and Watergate and kind of had it on the mind. So we're like, all right, we've got this amazing location. And when you give an amazing location to an indie filmmaker, they may run with it, and I did. And then, I teamed up.
The word, absolutely, yeah,
exactly. And then I teamed up with the writing partner Daniel Moya, and then coincidentally, his aunt worked in this diner that was just down the street from Terry's motel, and it was a period-looking diner. So we're like, well, that's two locations. Now we have to make the movie. So yeah.
What did you know about Watergate coming into the project? Again, you co-wrote, you directed 18 and a Half. Mm-hmm. What was your familiarity, your jumping off point heading into the project?
Well, I knew a fair bit. I mean, I'm a big fan of All the President's Men. I'd actually just seen a screening of it with Woodward and Bernstein at a film festival doing the Q&A a few years earlier. I'd read the books. I'd actually written about Watergate in some other context for another project. So I knew a fair bit about it. But my writing partner, it was 25 at the time, he didn't know anything about it. So it was a good combination because, we could approach it as if the audience either knows a lot about Watergate or knows nothing about Watergate. And that's really worked out nicely with the film now that it's out there, is that it doesn't matter if you know anything or not know anything. Because even the parts that we go into are kind of the really obscure parts of Watergate and some of the connections to ITT and Wonder Bread and Howard Hughes, which are not normally talked about in Watergate.
I wasn't aware.
But if you do the research, they're there, and if you don't do the research, you'll find out about it. So, and that's fine too. But really, it's really a story about two couples, and who are fictional, and just against this backdrop of Watergate. So you don't really need to know much about Watergate or anything about it. And we've shown it around the world at festivals in Brazil and Canada and the UK and Spain, and people kind of relate and make it relevant to their own, circumstances in their own country. But really, they're relating to the characters. Our lead actress Willa Fitzgerald and John Magaro. I mean, there's some fantastic actors in the film. So, yeah, that's sort of an answer.
No, it is an answer, and you nailed it. And you know it better than as well as anyone, but better certainly than me. You got to have a story, and you got to have characters that are compelling for the audience to invest in. You have done that here, and that leads to the two acting professionals you just mentioned. Everybody in the film is uniformly excellent, in my opinion. They all seem to understand what you wanted, and they nailed their respective roles, and collectively they were very effective in their performances. But the two keys, the two principals in the film are Willa Fitzgerald and as the stenographer, and then John Magaro as the newspaper reporter. They had to have chemistry, and they did. And I'm going to describe this. I'm going to let you go and talk about your two lead performers here, and working with them, and just a little bit about Willa and John. It was funny as hell. It was cute, and the banter back and forth was perfect. These are pros. They understand their jobs, and you lost yourself in them as the characters. Not to reveal, because it's as the movie goes along, there is a jarring shift in tone toward the end of the film, and we're not going to get into specifics, of course, because that would spoil it. But they were on point, Willa and John, throughout the whole movie. Talk about Willa and John's performances and about working with two of these really fine actors.
Yeah, I mean, it was a treat for me, because as a director, I didn't have to do much. I mean, they were so good. Willa, a lot of people know her now from her role in Reacher, the Amazon series Reacher, which just came out a few months ago. But she's a great trained actress. She's worked in movies, TV, all kinds of things. And John Magaro, people know him a lot from The Big Short, and he was just in Many Saints of Newark, and of course First Cow. And both these actors were recommended to me by other directors. I mean, that's the nice thing when you're in the indie film world, is you meet a lot of other directors. And so both of them came recommended. And, we didn't have a lot of time to rehearse with this thing. It was all kind of thrown together at the last minute a little bit in terms of the casting. But, what helped is that there was a 3-hour drive from New York to Greenport, Long Island, where we were shooting. And they were in the car together, so they had a lot of time together. And Willa brought her dog with, so we all got a chance to meet the dog. Cool. And we all stayed right next to each other at this motel. And so that allowed, when we were done shooting, we could all kind of hang out and drink product placement wine and eat product placement Omaha steaks and hang out with the dog on the beach. And so that really gave all the actors a chance to kind of gel and get this really nice chemistry. And because we were surrounded in this kind of 70s period looking motel, we all kind of got into that groovy 70s vibe, which I think helped everyone. So they were just terrific. And just wonderful to work with and great collaborators on the film.
Yeah, and I'd seen John McGarrell before, Not Fade Away. Movie came out about 10 years ago about a rock band that could have been, but never was. He was excellent in that. I don't know that I've seen him since, but wow, what a performance he and Will and everybody in the film delivered. I got to ask you about Richard Kind. How did he become he's one of my favorites of all time. Have I been clear about that? How did you get him into the film, and what was it like working with Richard?
Well, this was actually the second film I've done with Richard. He was in my last film, Bernard and Huey, and so I've known him. So I've known him for a few years, but he's very busy. I mean, he's always working on all kinds of things. He'll show up for anything, which means even though I knew him and knew he would be good for the part, we didn't know for sure we could get him until the schedule worked out, and we did. But his was the one part that we kind of wrote a little bit with him in mind, but again, we didn't know we could get him. But he's great. I mean, he really loves to work, and so he'll show up in movies, plays, podcasts, anything. If there's food, he'll be there. And but also he's of an age where he remembers Watergate, like I do, or probably better because he's older than me, and remembers the significance of it. So he could kind of really relate to that era in a way that maybe other actors couldn't. And he's just great. Other actors love working with him. John McGarrell had worked with him before, so he was excited to work with him again. And he comes in, he does his thing, he gets out.
He definitely does his thing, and I just to me he's a treasure. He's always engaging and generally funny, but he's a hell of a dramatic actor too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it is. And I've seen him do like hardcore dramatic stuff, and he can really pull it off. So yeah, one day he will be winning an Oscar, sooner than later, I hope. So
well, I hope so. I really do. He deserves it. Last thing on the film, and then we'll move on and talk about Slamdance. Nixon. Richard Nixon, boy, what hasn't been said about this man and this president and this political figure over the decades. What are your thoughts and feelings about Nixon, Dan?
Well, it's funny. With every day, he seems to get better and better.
He was a good president. He was colossally insecure and paranoid, and thought everybody was out to get him. But he was a hell of a president.
Yeah, no, I mean he accomplished a lot, and especially in the rearview mirror of history, he's a flaming moderate, compared to some folks today, and was able to, he created the EPA, and he had détente with Russia and China, and so there is a legacy, but he was like this Shakespearean figure. He had this fatal flaw, just as you say, the paranoia. And that was completely his undoing, bugging everybody else, bugging himself, and then forgetting about it. Like that literally was his undoing. And if he hadn't been so paranoid, he probably would have accomplished a lot more. But absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that was exactly the case with Nixon. And the 18.5-minute gap, Watergate was a 2.5-year saga. Filled with little mini scandals all along the way, but the revelation that there was this deleted gap, that somebody had deleted it, somebody had obstructed justice. That was kind of the turning point where even his own party kind of lost him. They're like, there's no way this thing got deleted mysteriously by his secretary. It was, I think that was really the turning point in the scandal where he lost his own base of support. And so that was, but that's Nixon's legacy. But it's interesting going to the Nixon library where I've been, and there's all these other great accomplishments, and then there's Watergate. That's what he's always going to be remembered for.
Yep, that's going to overshadow everything that he accomplished on behalf of this country. You're right, and if you're not familiar, just real quick, Watergate was a break-in by some bungling crooks who broke into the DNC headquarters at the Watergate Hotel because Nixon allegedly wanted information about the Democratic Party heading into the 72 election. It didn't even need to happen. First of all, it shouldn't have happened, and it didn't even need to happen. He was going to win in a landslide over McGovern, and that speaks to what we're talking about here. He just didn't have it within to believe in himself.
Yeah, and then he surrounded himself with a lot of weirdos.
Yeah, he was an interesting, eclectic cast of characters. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard not to see Watergate as a farce, and it's hard not to make it funny. And we had an amazing voice cast, do those tapes in our film, because we had to recreate, this missing gap, which nobody to this day or will ever know what's on it.
Yeah, Dan, I wanted to talk to you about the voices in 18 and a half of Nixon. Bruce Campbell was the voice of President Richard Nixon, and then John Cryer was the voice of Bob Haldeman. And talk about getting both those actors, and they were hilarious, but they were also very poignant in their voice performances in 18 and a half.
Yeah, well, both of these guys I've sort of vaguely known a little bit for a while and wanted to work with for a while. So, and this was an easy commitment to get actors to just do some voice work. And in the end, we actually recorded it over Zoom because it was during the pandemic. And so it was a great way to get actors still working. Like, this is right when the pandemic had started, and we had actually started shooting March 3rd, 2020, and we had to take a break after 11 days. We took a 6-month hiatus. But it was during that time that we were able to do the voice recordings. But Bruce Campbell had been a big sort of Watergate aficionado. When he was 14, he watched the Senate hearings every day during the summer, because that was all that was on TV. And he and Ted Raimi had done some little sketches with Nixon before. But I really wanted to get someone like Bruce who, I told him, don't do like a Nixon impersonation. We could get anyone to do that.
No, he didn't do that. Yeah.
Bruce Campbell as Nixon. So he brings his own kind of sense of humor, sense of gravitas, sense of irony to the part, which was perfect for what you wanted in Nixon. And then John Cryer similarly, brought, his kind of droll sense of humor to Haldeman. And then Ted Raimi, who's Sam Raimi's brother, and so he and Bruce had worked together for literally 50 years. They'd known each other since they were kids, and so they had this great interaction that they could just play with. So it was really fun working with those guys, and it was almost like recording a little 18.5-minute radio drama, just an audio drama,
effectively
in the movie. And so that was a fun challenge, and as I say, it was great creatively to just be able to do something during those early months of the pandemic, while actors couldn't otherwise act. They couldn't be on TV, they couldn't do movies, they couldn't do theater. So this was a great experience, I think, for all of them.
Boy, no kidding. Well, that's right when March of 2020, when everything went to hell in a handbasket, huh? Absolutely. In this country and around the world, as we all are painfully aware. I want to talk about Slamdance. Slamdance is a film festival that you co-founded. Mm-hmm. And I want you to tell us what Slamdance is all about, the genesis of why you even wanted to create this film festival. And then I want to talk about, it's in Utah. It goes on at the same time that a decades-long independent film festival, Sundance, is going on. So the floor is yours. Tell us about Slamdance and how it came to be.
Well, we started in 1995, and it was at a time when when independent film was kind of going Hollywood. It was around that time that Miramax became part of Disney, that Fine Line became part of Warner Brothers, that Fox was launching Fox Searchlight, and Sundance, which had been this great independent film bastion for about 10 years at that point, kind of went Hollywood, and they started, they said, "Hey, Harvey, come on in,"
Yeah,
regrettable. In so many ways, and they started focusing on films by second-time directors as opposed to first-time directors, films with bigger budgets, and films with name actors, and films that already had distribution. And they kind of left behind this niche that they had been supporting for 10 years of the first-time directors with no distribution and the the real scruffy folks out there. Yeah. So I had a film, actually, you can see it behind me, Omaha the Movie, that I had made that year and teamed up with we had a dozen feature films and a dozen short films, and we literally got together, showed up in Park City, Utah, where Sundance is, at the same time, literally 30 feet down the hall.
Wow.
We rented a screening room from where Sundance's main screening room was, and we just started showing our films. Because at the time, if you didn't get into Sundance, you were kind of dead in the water. I mean, we had distributors tell us, hey, we love your film, and if it gets into Sundance, we'll pick it up for distribution. But even other festivals, regional US festivals, international festivals, they would just take that Sundance program and go, yep, here's our list of festivals, or here's our list of independent films of, American independent films this year. So we kind of needed to break through that Sundance hegemony. And anyway, we decided to keep doing it. And so we've been doing it for 28 years now. And because of that, we've shown the first films of everyone from Bong Joon-ho, Christopher Nolan, Rian Johnson, the Russo brothers, the late Lynn Shelton, Paranormal Activity was the Sundance film. Yeah. The Safdie brothers, or Sean Baker, all kinds of interesting people that have since gone on to, really amazing careers. Yeah. But so Slamdance is still there to give that first break to a lot of up and coming filmmakers.
That is very cool, Dan. I talk primarily with and cover primarily independent films, and talk with independent filmmakers, and that's the spirit of what Sundance was starting off, as you talked about. Sundance is the baby of Robert Redford. He is the godfather of the Sundance Film Festival. He's also happens to be my favorite actor of all time. You talked about All the President's Men. I've seen it a billion times. Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, which he co-starred with Paul Newman in, is my favorite film of all time. Has Redford dropped by Slamdance? Have you had any interaction with him when you're there?
Well, the second year we did it, he called us parasites, but he had
maybe not.
Yeah, but subsequent to that, other people have asked him about us, and he's kind of grudgingly accepted that we serve our own little function in that ecosystem. So, and I've talked to him a couple times briefly. But there's another Redford connection to 18 and a half. I don't know if you made it to the very end of the end credits, and this isn't really a spoiler, but we discovered. Actually, in doing research, that right after the 18.5-minute gap, about 2 minutes later, Nixon and Haldeman are talking about a Redford movie. They're talking about a film called The Hot Rock, which is a little bit of an obscure film from 1972. Yes. And Haldeman saying, "Oh yeah, I just saw this film," and Nixon, I think, had seen the trailer. He's like, "Oh yeah, this heist film where the guys get stuck in the box," and they start joking that, "Oh, it's a heist gone wrong, just like this Watergate thing."
I did see that. I did hear it. That's awesome.
Yeah, which is pretty remarkable because, this is 3 days after the burglary, and they're already laughing about and self-aware enough that they know that Watergate was a farce, and then Nixon watched, he asked Haldeman to rent the movie, and they watched it that weekend. And you look in the screening logs, and Nixon watched
they actually did.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's funny because Redford actually plays a plumber in the film. He's trained as a plumber in the movie. And the other interesting thing is that the Hot Rock was written by William Goldman, who 2 years later would write all the screenplay to All the President's Men, which of course Redford was in. So there's all these weird connection to Redford. I don't, and I think no one else had ever discovered this little snippet of dialogue in the tapes, because it was never transcribed. Nobody ever listened to it because they thought it wasn't about Watergate. Yeah. So I'll bet Redford doesn't even know that Nixon was a fan.
he probably doesn't. I'm betting that he probably doesn't. Hey, I want to talk about now. This interview will live stream after the film releases on VOD and digital July 5th, but pretty much any online platform people will be able to access and watch 18 and a half. Is that correct?
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah. Starting July 5th in North America, US and Canada, and then actually July 11th in the UK and Ireland.
Okay, so good.
We're going global.
Watch it. Hell of a film. I'm going to come out with my my review soon. This week is the plan for 18 and a half. Again, the film is 18 and a half. And the director and the co-writer is who we have just been enjoying a conversation with. and that is as Dan Mirvish. Dan, really appreciate it. Wish you nothing but good things moving forward here. And can you give us an idea of what? And I know this is sensitive and kind of hush hush for folks in the film industry, but any ideas that you can share with us in terms of what you're working on moving forward?
Well, I'm still working a lot on 18 and a half. Our soundtrack just got released, so people can already listen to the soundtrack on iTunes and Spotify, that sort of thing. There's talk about turning 18 and a half into a play, or maybe expanding it into an episodic TV series. So there's a lot we can still do with this kind of world we created. So I'm still working on that, and the DVD and the video. We're still playing at festivals. The film played at 21 festivals on eight countries on 4 continents.
Wow!
So it's going to be playing in Australia next month. So there's still a lot of life left in this thing.
Good, Dan. Thanks again. We appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Again, my guest, Dan Mirvish, who is the director, co-writer of the new film 18 and a half, based on the 18 and a half minutes that, as far as the general public knows, is still missing from the Nixon tapes recorded in 1972. This is Conversations with the Quick Flick Critic. I am your host, John Smistad. The show live streams every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on Rude Rangers TV. You can also access it through Roku and Amazon Fire TV and Google Play on Rude Rangers TV. So look for the Rude Rangers TV app wherever you get your apps. Until next time, as always, listen, learn. I think we've learned some things today, and laugh. Laughing, we can't do enough of it these days, folks, can we? Goodbye, everybody.